You ever see how two people can read the exact same text, word for word, but walk away with completely different takeaways? One person finds wisdom and inspiration, while the other finds a reason for conflict. The difference isn't in the words themselves, right? It's all about the lens they're using to read them. And that idea, that power of the correct lens, is exactly what we're going to get into today.
So, the source we're digging into kicks things off with this beautiful metaphor. It compares divine guidance to rain. Think about it. Rain is this universal thing. It's essential for all life. But what happens after the rain falls? Well, that depends entirely on the kind of ground it lands on.
Okay, so first up, picture this really fertile, rich soil. When the rain hits, it just soaks it all up. It drinks it in, gets nourished, and then, boom, it grows something amazing, something that benefits everyone around it. This is like a heart that doesn't just hear knowledge, it gets it. It understands it, lives by it, and then shares that goodness with the world.
Now this second type of ground is fascinating. It's like hard, solid rock. It can't absorb the water for itself. It can't grow anything on its own. But what it can do is hold that water, right? It creates a pool, a reservoir, and other people can come and drink from it, water their crops, and benefit from it. This represents the person who preserves knowledge perfectly. They memorize it and pass it on without error, even if they haven't personally tapped into its deepest meanings. There's still a huge benefit to the community.
And finally, you've got the third type. This is like a dry, barren patch of sand. The rain falls on it, but the ground just can't hold it. And it certainly can't grow anything. The water just evaporates, It provides no benefit to the land and no benefit to anyone else. It's the heart that hears knowledge, but is left completely unchanged.
So, how does a parable about rain and soil connect with us today? Well, it's actually the perfect illustration of a really modern and pretty dangerous problem, the crisis of interpretation. And here's the key point our source makes. The problem we face isn't a lack of information. It's not like the texts are lost. No, they're preserved, they're out there for everyone. The real danger comes from what the source calls a sickly understanding, a warped, crooked interpretation that twists the meaning to fit a pre-existing agenda.
And let's be clear, this is not just some philosophical debate. The stakes are incredibly high. This quote really drives home just how devastating the consequences can be. A flawed understanding isn't just a bad idea. It can literally lead to ruin and tragedy on a massive scale.
So, if a sickly understanding is the disease, what's the cure? Well, according to our source, it's something that goes way beyond just being smart or well-read. It's a special kind of insight.
The term for this is al-fahem. We can translate it as deep understanding, but it's really framed as something more. It's described as a kind of divine light, a gift of clarity that God puts in your heart. It's what allows a person to just see things clearly, to cut through the noise and tell the difference between what's true and what's false.
This gift was considered so important, it was something people prayed for. Take this famous prayer for a young Ibn Abbas. The prophet didn't ask for wealth or power for him. He asked for this specific gift: deep understanding and the ability to interpret correctly. And as we're about to see, that prayer was answered in a pretty spectacular way.
All right, let's dive into a historical case study that brings all these ideas to life. We're going to look at the story of the very first extremists in Islam, the Kharijites, and the man who went to debate them, that same Ibn Abbas.
Now you have to understand who the Kharijites were. These weren't bad people, not on the surface. In fact, it was the opposite. Their piety was off the charts. Their prayers were so long, their fasting so constant, that it was said even the most dedicated companions would look at them and feel like their own worship was falling short. So they had the texts, and they definitely had the devotion. The question is, did they have the understanding?
And we're not talking about some small fringe group here. Ibn Abbas went out to meet an army of 24,000 men who had broken away, totally convinced that their rigid, literalist reading was the only truth, and that everyone else, including the leader of the Muslims, had gone astray.
This is where you see deep understanding in action. Ibn Abbas didn't show up with some new revelation. He used the very same texts they were using, but with a correct lens. For every one of their points, he had a brilliant counter. They said, "You let men judge in God's affairs." He said, "Well, God lets men judge over a rabbit. Shouldn't we let them judge to save thousands of lives?" They asked why he fought a battle without taking captives, and he hit them with an impossible question. Would you take your mother, Aisha, the prophet's wife, as your slave? And when they complained about dropping a title for a treaty, He reminded them that the prophet himself did the very same thing to make peace. He used context, principle, and wisdom to completely dismantle their house of cards.
And the result? It was absolutely mind-blowing. This wasn't a victory of swords, it was a victory of ideas. That one debate, fueled by true understanding, convinced 20,000 of those men to lay down their weapons and come back. Just by helping them see through the right lens, Ibn Abbas pulled a huge majority back from the brink.
So how do we get there? How do we make sure we have that fertile soil, that sound understanding for ourselves? Well, the source material actually lays out a pretty clear roadmap.
First, you got to take a holistic approach. You can't just cherry-pick one verse that seems to support your view and ignore the 10 others that provide context. You have to look at the whole picture. Second, and this is a big one, you have to avoid personal bias. Don't decide what you want to believe first and then go searching for verses to back you up. Let the texts, as a whole, guide you to your belief. And third, value precedent. See how the earliest generations, the ones closest to the source, understood these things. Their understanding carries a special kind of weight.
And really, that brings us right back to our world today. We are drowning in information, right? You can find a quote, a clip, or an article to justify literally any position you want. The rain of information is pouring down everywhere. So the real question for all of us isn't, how do we find more information? The question is, how do we cultivate that fertile ground of true understanding inside ourselves so that we can actually grow something good instead of getting lost in a desert of misunderstanding?